Welcome back. Rudy Giuliani defending President Trump's constant attacks against the Russia investigation, telling CNN the origins of Robert Mueller's probe are, quote, illegitimate. Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell, who serves on the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, appreciate you taking some time for us here. Rudy Giuliani essentially admitting, as we know, part of the legal team's strategy is to undermine the Mueller probe in the court of public opinion. So how do you counter that?
Good afternoon, Erica, and first, gratitude to our fallen service members this Memorial Day. And to your question, you counter it by making this about the future and not the past. This is about whether any president is above the law or not. This is about, whether having a rule of law in America is something that we value or something we're going to allow to be invaded upon because of political convenience. And so, I think we should make every effort possible to look forward and make sure that Americans know that our interest in what President Trump and his team did with the Russians is mostly to prevent the Russians or any other enemy from attacking us again, because our democracy can't take continued efforts like the Russians demonstrated, and not to look backward and make this about relitigating the last election.
I want to get your take on something that your colleague, Congressman Adam Schiff, of course, is the top Democrat on the Intel Committee, something he had to say. Take a listen.
The broad question is, how do you counter a president who repeats falsehood after falsehood after falsehood, that has the bully pulpit of the presidency to do it, and has allies in Congress who are willing to support that? And Martha, at the end of the day, there's only one remedy for that, and that is you need to throw the bums out.
To your point of needing to look forward, is calling your Republican colleagues bums the right way to move forward?
Well, I think Ranking Member Schiff's point is that if they are not willing to be open to having their minds changed about holding the president accountable, then their seats are going to have to be changed. The problem here is that I think we've tried to be honest workers all along in this investigation, particularly the House investigation, and our Republican colleagues have either put their heads in the sand to look the other way, or they're rowing in the same direction with the president. And the American people are exasperated by the constant lies the president is willing to tell about basic accepted truths. I actually think, Erica, one day you're going to ask me to come on air and defend whether the sun really sets in the west because the president woke up one day and tweeted that it's set in the east, and it's just absolutely maddening.
I can confirm that that will not happen. but as we look at this, is this really leading by example when you're resorting to calling your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, or your colleagues, I should say, are bums? I mean, how is that really leading by example? How is that taking the high road? How is that moving things forward?
Well, what it is saying is that you're actually worse than bums if you're not willing to stand up to a president who is attacking a former FBI director, a patriot who served our country in Vietnam, like Bob Mueller. You're worse than a bum if you are allowing a president to cash in on the Oval Office and put Chinese workers ahead of the American workers when your company is taking a $500 million loan from Indonesia. You're worse than a bum when you're allowing your daughter to receive trademarks from the Chinese while you're executing trade deals. And so, I think he was probably being kind to them. People want to see a check on the president, but they also want to see us to put on his desk the things that he has said that he would sign that Republicans won't show the courage to do, like immigration reform, like an infrastructure package, like prescription drug reform, and like background checks. So I think people are pretty fed up, and they want to see people to start to stand up to the president.
In terms of Rudy Giuliani, we're hearing more about him and his efforts to keep the conversation, actually, of course, on the Russia probe, to undermine that investigation. Take a listen to more of what he had to say.
We're defending here. It is for public opinion, because eventually the decision here is going to be impeach, not impeach. Members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, are informed a lot by their constituents. So our jury is as it should be, is the American people.
Rudy Giuliani bringing up impeachment there, as we know the investigation is not over. We don't have an end date for it. Are Democrats, though, looking to impeach this president?
No, and actually, Erica, I would rather see the president impeached at the ballot box by the voters to prove that democracy works. However, as I said, no one is above the law. But right now, we have not had thorough investigations to find any wrongdoing because Republicans aren't willing to use the subpoena power. The American people want us to not miss the message they sent in 2016. Many of them were feeling disconnected and that opportunity was out of reach. We should focus on putting it back within reach. And, President Trump, to his credit, he's identified a lot of the anxieties and the problems in this country, but he's shown no willingness to bring the country together to work and address those issues. And so I think we're best at beating him on those economic issues and showing them that he's just failed to deliver for them.
There's still, we should point out, no Trump collusion evidence at this point, correct?
No, I've seen plenty of evidence in broad daylight. Actually, he invited the Russians on a public stage to hack further. And then once they started offering information to his family, they never turned it down, never reported it to the FBI. And in fact, Roger Stone, one of his advisors, was implicating that, intimating that more hacks were to come against the Podestas. I think it's out there. Whether it reaches the level of reasonable doubt to get a conviction in a court, that's up to Bob Mueller. We should allow the bipartisan legislation that would allow him to stay in place to come to the floor for a vote.
We are going to have to leave it there, but that last point, I'm sure will give a lot of people something to talk about. Congressman Eric Swalwell, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
My pleasure.